Welcome back to another edition of Real Spiritual Talk Radio. I am your host, Lamont Gates, once again bringing you the world of faith, metaphysicality, and spirituality. Today, my guest had an experience that probably lent more questions than answers. Joining me today, ladies and gentlemen, is near-death experiencer, Mr. Manuel Ufarte. Manuel, welcome to Real Spiritual Talk Radio.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on. Now, Manuel, I understand you had an experience that was outside of the norm, would you say, when it comes to the realm of reality?
To me, it was weird. To some people, they just shrug their shoulders. And to others, they immediately say, ooh, okay. And so... yeah, I don't know what category you fall into, but yeah, it was intriguing.
Yes, well, why don't we just delve into it right now? Before we get into your near-death experience, why don't we get a little bit of historical context regarding any previous religious or spiritual upbringings? Did you have any faith or any spiritual leanings prior to your near-death experience?
Well, like every Hispanic person in the universe, I grew up Catholic. Then I changed from Catholic to the LDS faith. And now I'm sort of swimming between anything that seems sort of religious. But right now I tend not to go anywhere. Sometimes I'll go to some Episcopalian church just to go to church, but I go to neither of my foundational churches.
Now, you said the LDS. You dabbled in that a little bit. Let's talk about that for a moment. Did you have any preconceived notions of the afterlife, or did you learn anything specifically about the afterlife when you were in the LDS? Because I know they have certainly a belief system in the afterlife that may differ from a lot of the other sects of Christianity.
You know, I got confused really fast. You know, I got baptized, the whole works, because I think it was more to do with a particular person that I knew than actually believing. But I really didn't study the church that much. I just went and flowed with it.
Why don't we get into your near-death experience? Talk to us about what it was that actually triggered the experience to occur.
Okay, that was interesting. I was home, and I all of a sudden started feeling some back pain. You know, I started taking whatever drug I had at home, trying to make it go away, and it wouldn't go away. So I went to my nearby hospital. I went there. They gave me some pain medication, and it didn't go away. They took an X-ray, and they saw that I had kidney stones. Okay, I can deal with that. And then they said, well, let's do something in order to localize where these stones are. So they proceeded to give me some dye, you know, an intravenous dye to, I guess, locate on a CT scan where the stones were. And immediately I go into cardiac arrest because I was allergic to the iodine that's in the dye. And I didn't know that, you know, I've never experienced anything. So I go into this cardiac arrest, and then the next thing I see, I'm floating above my body. And I see these doctors, you know, hitting me on the chest and all that kind of stuff. And I'm intrigued by watching this, you know, but then, okay, I figured out I'm dead. And all of a sudden, I go off, and I'm sort of like being, I don't know what word to use, but transported to somewhere else. And I find myself in this room that is absolutely white. There was only one area that was not white. Everything else was white. The people were wearing white because there were people there. But on my right-hand side, it was like a light blue color. And then there was like something like a tunnel there. And then it had a tunnel entrance that was dark. And I'm looking around, trying to figure out why I'm dead. I'm finally getting into it that I'm dead. And so here comes this two people to me. And they ask me my name. And I tell them. They look at each other and say, "You're here too early." Okay, what does that mean? I'm here too early. And well, you're here too early. You're not supposed to be here. Okay. Where am I supposed to be? Back on Earth. Oh, this is not the Earth? No. And so, okay. Then I figure out, okay, this is heaven, I guess. And I asked them, is this heaven? But no, this is like a transitional point to heaven. Oh, okay. So is God here? Oh no, he's like way beyond here. Oh, okay. So you just work for God, right? Well, we don't work for God. We don't get a paycheck. You know, we're here serving Him. Oh, okay. Okay. So like any religion back on Earth, you know, you work for the religion. You don't get paid by the religion. Yeah, that's about right. Okay. And so every one of you wear white? Yeah. Look at yourself. And so I looked down and I was wearing these white robes. How did that happen? Oh, you can't be here with wearing what you were wearing before. Yeah, you were wearing a white shirt and black pants, but you can't be here with another color besides white. Oh, okay, well, nice to hear. Now, and then I asked the question, is there actually what in religion they teach you, that there's Satan versus God type of deal? Yeah, there's a Satan, but you know, you have to be really, really, really bad to even approach him. So, you know, you have different degrees here depending on your life on Earth, but you know, you have to really be bad to actually encounter Satan. Oh, okay. And so then I said, okay, now what? Well, we got to send you back. Okay, go ahead. Well, it's not that easy. You have to, like, you know, right now we're reading your mind and you're totally confused. Said, no kidding, okay? Or you need to calm down. You need to get down to sleep mode. And I asked him, how am I going to do that? And said, we'll help you. And so I just took their point, and I can see I was getting into like a drowsy type deal. And I said, okay, wait a minute. Am I going to remember this? They said, yeah, you'll remember it. But I would recommend you don't go talk about it because people are going to think that you're insane. I recommend you don't talk about it. Okay, that's fine with me. I'm trained not to talk. So that comes easy to me. I did what they did and what they said. And I said, can I look around one more time? And they said, okay. And I looked and okay, this is interesting here. Okay, I'm ready. I said, okay. Turn around, facing away from us. I did that. And start walking, but take slow steps. And so I started walking slow steps. And then Next thing I remember, I'm back on my hospital room bed, and one of the doctors says, "I've got normal rhythm." The other one says, "Yes, I've got his pulse is back and it's back to normal." And that was it. Then the next thing I know, I wake up like a day later, a couple of days later, and my wife is sitting next to me, and I start waking up, and she screams out, "He's awake!" and I'm awake and wondering, who do I tell anything to? And I decided not to tell anybody anything, and here I am.
Wow. Now that is a very, very intriguing story. Let me recap a little bit before I go into my follow-up question. So you pretty much flatlined on the bed here while the doctors were working on you. You had what can be easily described as an out-of-body experience as you looked down and saw your body being pounded upon by these doctors, and you ended up in this white room. And you were approached by these two entities. Now, I read in a post or a statement that you posted or sent to me prior to this interview, and you said that these entities were also dressed up themselves. Tell me what they looked like, what their apparel looked like.
All white. You know, I'm sort of taught to observe everything, and so they were wearing white suits, white shirts, white ties. I looked down at their feet, and they were wearing white shoes, and I presume that their socks were white. They were wearing what I would say normal human clothing. Now, I mentioned that there were people walking before these two entities came. There were like people walking, and they were looking at me and smiling at me. And they were wearing like white robes, you know, from neck down to the feet type of robes. And, but those are the only two figures I saw. And they were human. There was nothing, you know, they weren't alien. They were just human beings in that entity, and I was there in that entity with them. And I think they knew that I wasn't supposed to be there because they looked at me, but they smiled. They were nice. And those two gentlemen that came to me, you know, they weren't mad. They weren't anything. They just went there. They asked me my name. They knew I wasn't supposed to be there. And they told me, "You're not supposed to be here."
Yes, and that's a very common statement many near-death experiencers hear when they have their near-death experiences. They usually hear it's not your time, or you're not supposed to be here, or you're early, as you heard. So then you go into this dialogue, this very impressive dialogue. And I say it's impressive because a lot of near-death experiencers say that when they ask a question, usually they get the response very quickly. And sometimes they get really deep responses, like how the world was formed, the nature of God, all the questions any philosopher would have. What's different between yours and theirs is that very often, maybe more time than not, they can't remember what the dialogue was really about. But you had this dialogue, and you were able to bring back everything. You were able to ask questions about God, and you were told God isn't exactly where you and these entities were, but was somewhere farther out. And then you ask questions about Satan, which is also a very relevant question, especially for religious authorities and people who delve into religion, especially in the Abrahamic faiths. You asked about Satan, and you were told, yes, there is a Satan, but you would have to virtually be like an Adolf Hitler in order to stand before that particular entity.
So you have to be really evil to go to Satan. And it's not, you know, as a kid, I went and stole some chewing gum, and I'm condemned to Satan. You know, it's you have to do really evil stuff to go to him.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, let me ask you, many near-death experiencers say when they do have dialogues and conversations with entities on the other side, that it's typically telepathic. Was this the case with you, or did you actually hear literal words being spoken?
Oh, heard literal words. These guys were speaking. I was listening to it. So, there wasn't any telepathic thing. And maybe because I wasn't there long enough, but it doesn't seem like that actually mattered. They talked to me. The two gentlemen. Nobody else spoke to me. They just looked at me and smiled. But yeah, these two gentlemen that I dealt with, they just spoke to me
Using actual words.
using actual words, and their lips moved, and the whole works.
Another thing they said to you was they advised you not to tell anyone because us humans here not many people understand this realm and what goes on after death, and they might think that you were crazy or insane.
That's exactly what they told me. They'll think that you're nuts. Those were the exact words that one of them said. They'll think you're nuts. So don't say anything. Don't mention anything. Just go with the flow. And I didn't mention anything to anybody for years. I didn't even tell my wife what had happened to me. I didn't want to be considered a nutcase, and so I said nothing. And then, you go into, and then the popularity of the internet came into play, and you see these NDE groups all over the place. And I start looking at them, and I say, okay, they're talking freely about near-death experiences. Why can't I? If they can talk about it, why can't I? And so I started listening into these groups, or at least going into these groups and seeing people's conversations, and sometimes I'd say, oh, that never happened to me. But,
Yeah, a wide variety of experiences. Indeed, there are. And yours would be very different from others, especially the dialogue that you came back with and the answers that you came back with. Eventually, though, you were told that you have to come back. Did you want to stay? How did that feel when you were told you wanted to come back?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to stay because you've got this totally peaceful experience there. You feel like there is actual peace, you just feel it. And they said, we need to send you back as soon as, quickly, because you can't be here. I said, why can't I be here? Because there are things that you have to do, and if you're not there, those things won't get done. And okay, but this is peaceful here. Down there, it's rotten being on Earth compared to here. And said, no, we have to send you back. You haven't completed, and the wording that they used, you haven't completed your mission. Now, I don't know if they said those words because I was in a military sort of background at that point, and so they wanted to make me comfortable, but they said, you haven't completed your mission. And I said, okay, I get it. But it's peaceful here. Yeah, but you'll be back. You promise? We can't promise that because I said, okay. Then they gave me the instructions how to go. I looked around one more time, and then I was waking up in a bed, and first thing I noticed was my chest hurt because that's where they were pouncing on me as I left. And my wife was there, and she saw me, and she goes out screaming, "He's awake!" And,
so, was there any verification that you had actually died from your doctors?
Oh yeah. Well, later on, a month or two later, I want to see my medical reports. You know, I don't take anything just because you tell me. And so I want to see my medical reports. I mean, so I saw it there. You know, they had to give them to me because of the Freedom of Information Act. And so I looked, okay. And okay, this is when I came in. Here's the drugs that they gave me. Here's the orders to give me this IV and whatever else. And, you know, basically it said at 1952, he died. And doctors proceeded to do CPR and provide him oxygen and give him electroshock and all that. So that was all detailed there.
It was well documented then that you had briefly died and was resuscitated at some point.
Yeah, it was there, you know, gave the doctors names and the whole works as to who was there. And then at some point, I guess when I entered my body back, you know, I came back and I had normal rhythm. That was in capital letters. He had normal rhythm. and that was it. And I said, well, okay, this is pretty neat. I got it somewhere in my storage bin. I have those paperworks. It was an interesting experience.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have. Now, I know you said you didn't tell anyone for a long time until you finally became familiar with the fact that other people via the internet were talking about some of the same things. Now, another thing
right.
Many near-death experiencers describe is when they come back from one of these near-death experiences, they're really not the same. They usually have what we call after effects. They may lack the fear of death. They may come back with some sort of precognition. They have deeper empathy levels because of where they've been and the peace and the joy that they felt over there that just can't be replicated over here. Did you come back with anything remotely close to these?
Oh, yeah. It was a feeling of there is something else. You know, it's not, you know, in the LDS format. You know, it wasn't what, you know, my bishop is telling me or Catholic, what my priest is telling me. It's for real. There is something else. It's not a written in the type of scripture thing or written in the doctrine of whatever church it is. It's for real. There is something else. And I got brave enough one time and went to my LDS bishop and told him, okay, I need to close the doors because if you've ever been in an LDS format, you know, you've got his door to his office, and then you got doors leading to where the clerks work at, and so I said, I need to close this door, and I need to make sure that when it's closed. I said, okay, what's going on? And I told him and said, ooh, okay. Do I have your permission to tell like the state president, which is his boss? And so yeah, I don't care. You know, it's what happened. And I said, okay. And so he went and told him later on. And so the state president talks to me and says, you know, what you experience is not within doctrine. Yeah, I know. I'm pretty familiar with the doctrine. And and I know it's not what it's said there, but that's what happened, you know. And are you going to tell anybody? No. I was told by them up there or down there or wherever I was at that not to tell anybody because people are not going to believe you. And so I can see that you're not believing me, and I'm not going to tell anybody anything. And you know, I told Bishop because I thought that he should know, but I'm not. I didn't tell anybody. And I really never told anybody else until, many years later when the internet is full of NDE groups and I started joining them, but not actually talking. I just wanted to see what other people were talking about and said, okay, these guys are talking freely about everything. Why can't I talk freely about everything? and so I started. And I think that's what brought me here. But yeah, I don't see a secret about it. It's the reality of what happens.
Now, I'm sure you would refer to yourself as a pretty rational person. Actually, you've been in the military and you currently work for that government agency with 3 letters. So
Yeah.
For someone to refer to you as insane or someone who's just flown over the cuckoo's nest, as they used to say, that pretty much wouldn't stand up here. Not only do you have millions of people who had very similar encounters to yours, but you work, again, in an agency that millions of Americans, entrust for their safety.
Yeah, movies like Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise tend to test that, but because, people ask me, oh, so are you like Tom Cruise? And I said, well, I've never experienced that blonde lady, sleeping with that blonde lady, but besides that, yeah, I guess I am. I don't get to blow up anything. I just am the paper hound out there. I've gone to missions, but you've got, like in the Marine Corps, you got the people that actually shoot, and then you got the guys in the back that are the counterintelligence people, and they go and direct you with their maps and with all their equipment, the enemy's over there, and go get them. So I was that paper hound, so I never really got to shoot anybody. I got to shoot targets in boot camp and then follow up to make sure that I'm still able to use a gun. But beyond that, I never got to the pleasure of shooting at anybody. Well, whether that's a pleasure or not,
Yeah. And nonetheless, it just speaks to your level of logic and rationale to work in a particular government that oversees millions of people. Now, final question I have for you. If you were to compare this earthly reality that we are both living in right now to your near-death experience and how that felt in terms of reality, what would the comparison be like?
Oh, it's so, when I was there, immediately when I was there in that white room, it was a feeling of calmness, a feeling of peace. There wasn't any fighting between anybody. There wasn't any arguing about anything. They just went with the flow. Everything was so peaceful. And that's what I felt. And I was there only probably maybe 10 minutes or so, earthly time. I don't know what in their time would be, but that's what I felt. And I didn't want to go away. I wanted to stay because this is peaceful. Down there, it's a miserable place to be. But they tell me, they go by the words that I understand. You haven't completed your mission. So, okay. And now it got into my head that, okay, I got other stuff to do. And so
you have a purpose.
I have a purpose. Once I, left that Marine Corps state and went into the agency with the 3 letters, that was my purpose. And said, okay, I'm glad that I returned back to that because I got to fulfill a difference. But I still remember what happened. I still am waiting for that one time. Do I want to die? No, I don't want to die, but I'm waiting for that time to arrive. In November, I'm going to be 70 years old. And, I'm more on that side of the of the spectrum than continuing to live, because I don't think that I'm going to live to be 120. My dad died at 80 something, but then he was a smoker and a drinker and all that. So I've never smoked or drank. I guess I could be credited a few years, but but I don't know. I could go to bed tonight and not wake up and end up back where I was before. So I don't know. I don't wish it, because I'm enjoying my life right now. I like what I'm doing. And
you said you remembered everything that you came back
Yep.
with. So this didn't feel like a dream. This felt just as
no.
real as the earthly realm.
Oh yeah, it was the same way as I'm going to believe that I'm talking to you on the phone about my experience. It's part of what I went through. It wasn't a dream. It was for real. Religious entities think there was a dream, or it was ideas put to you by the enemy. But no, I knew that God was in charge. They didn't say, that's all baloney, that Satan is in charge. So they didn't say that. They just said he's somewhere else. I said, okay. And so I didn't take it any further. I didn't want to know where he was. And just my religious background told me there's either, in hell or LDS format and outer darkness. And so I knew he was somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then we move on.
Yeah. And quite obviously, there are others, millions of people who actually agree with you, who've either had their own near-death experiences, or people who are also believers and coming into the knowledge of near-death experiences. With that said, Manuel, I want to thank you for coming on Real Spiritual Talk Radio and sharing with us your very intriguing and fascinating account.
Okay, well, I thank you very much. It was fun to tell it to somebody that actually is not looking at me strangely.
No, we'll never do that here. No, not at all.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being able to tell people my experiences.
And with that said, thank you once again for coming on Real Spiritual Talk Radio. Ladies and gentlemen, Manuel Ufarte.